Today we're going to focus on the following 10 keywords: replenish, sanctuary, numb, petty, commentary, sheepish, grit, nonconformist, ovation, and smug. Now let's start with the first keyword, replenish. Now we can see here this lady drinking water, and it seems that she has been working out, and she seems that she needs water to compensate for the water she lost during the workout. Could that be the meaning of replenish? Let's find out. Now replenish is a verb. If you replenish something, you make it full or complete again. And this is a formal word. For example, we say 300,000 tons of cereals are needed to replenish stocks, to make the stocks full again. Like this lady, she needed water to replenish the water she lost, to make the level of water in her body full again. So the next time you remember the picture of this lady drinking water, remember the word replenish and what it means. And now for the next keyword, sanctuary. Now you look at this picture, we can see this house in the middle of nowhere, in a valley or somewhere away from everything. Now this is the perfect place you might want to go to forget about everything around you. And you can feel safe in that place. It doesn't mean that you are a wanted person or whatever, but it means that it is a place for peace of mind and safety, maybe. Could we call this place a sanctuary? Maybe. But first, let's find out about the word sanctuary. What does that word mean? Let's find out. A sanctuary is a countable noun. A sanctuary is a place where people who are in danger from other people can go to be safe. For example, his farm became a sanctuary for thousands of people who fled the civil war, a safe place. And sanctuary can be used in a different context as well, this time as an uncountable noun. Sanctuary is the safety provided in a sanctuary. We can call the safety sanctuary as well, not just the place. For example, some of them have sought sanctuary in the church. And synonyms for sanctuary in this context are the words protection, shelter, refuge, and haven. And we can use sanctuary in a different context as well, this time again as a countable noun. A sanctuary is a place where birds or animals are protected and allowed to live freely. For example, we say a bird sanctuary. In that place, hunting is definitely not allowed. Or a wildlife sanctuary, a place where wild animals are allowed to live freely. And synonyms for sanctuary in this context are the words reserve, park, preserve, and reservation. So the next time you remember this picture of this house in the middle of nowhere, remember the word sanctuary and what it means. And now for the next keyword, numb. Now you can see this picture, and unfortunately the person in the picture has to use a wheelchair, and probably because this person can't walk. Now, how does that relate to the word numb? Does it relate to the idea that this person can't walk? Or does it relate to the chair? Or does it relate to the idea that this person can't feel his legs? That's why he or she can't walk, and that's why they have to use a wheelchair. Let's find out. Now, numb is an adjective. If a part of your body is numb, you cannot feel anything there. For example, he could feel his fingers growing numb at their tips, so he could not feel the tips of his fingers anymore. They were growing numb. And synonyms for numb in this context are the words unfeeling, dead, frozen, and paralyzed. And numbness is the noun from numb. For example, we say, I have recently been suffering from pain and numbness in my hands. And that means I lost feeling of my hands. They are numb. And synonyms for numbness are the words deadness, insensitivity, and dullness. And numb can be used in a different context. If you are numb with shock, fear, or grief, you are so shocked, frightened, or upset that you cannot think clearly or feel any emotion. So it is not always physical, it could be emotional as well. For example, the mother, numb with grief, has trouble speaking. She is so shocked, she can't think clearly or feel anything. And synonyms for numb in this context are the words stupefied, deadened, unfeeling, and insensible. And numbness is the noun again. For example, many men become more aware of emotional numbness in their 40s. And synonyms for numbness in this context are the words torpor, deadness, dullness, and stupefaction. Numbly is an adverb that we can use here. For example, he walked numbly into the cemetery. And numb can also be used as a verb. If an event or experience numbs you, you can no longer think clearly or feel any emotion. Just like the noun we just talked about, but it can be used as a verb. For example, for a while the shock of Philip's letter numbed her. Or, the horror of my experience has numbed my senses. And synonyms for numb as a verb in this context are the words stun, knock out, paralyze, and daze. And we can add an ed to make it an adjective so it becomes numbed. For example, I'm so numbed with shock that I can hardly think. And numb as a verb can also be used in a different context. If cold weather, a drug, or a blow numbs a part of your body, you can no longer feel anything in it. For example, the cold numbed my fingers. Or she awoke with a numbed feeling in her left leg. And synonyms for numb in this sense are the words deaden, freeze, dull, and paralyze. So the next time you remember this picture of this person in the wheelchair, remember the word numb and what it means. And now for the next keyword, petty. Now you look at this picture and there is a hand and there's this little bug on the hand. It's so small. They must have zoomed in the camera quite a bit to get the image of this bug. But we're not here to talk about the bug, but maybe to talk about how small the bug is. Could that relate to the meaning of the word petty? Let's find out. Now, petty is an adjective. You can use petty to describe things such as problems, rules, or arguments which you think are unimportant or relate to unimportant things. And this is a negative word that shows disapproval. For example, he was miserable all the time and Rose would start over petty things. For you, it's unimportant things. It's not worth it. That's what you're trying to say. Another example, the meeting degenerated into petty squabbling. People started arguing over silly and unimportant things. And petty can also be used in a different context. If you describe someone's behavior as petty, you mean that they care too much about small, unimportant things and perhaps that they are unnecessarily unkind. And this is also a negative word that shows disapproval. For example, we say he was petty-minded and obsessed with detail, with unimportant things, with small things. And synonyms for petty in this context are the words small-minded, mean, cheap, or grudging. And pettiness is the uncountable noun we can use here. For example, never had she met such spite and pettiness. And here we have petty in a different context. Petty is used of people or actions that are less important, serious, or great than others. For example, Wilson was not a man who dealt with petty officials. Now, these officials are not as important, serious, or great as others. Another example, petty crimes such as handbag snatching and minor break-ins. So these are not important crimes. We're not saying they're not crimes, they are, but they are less important or less serious crimes. And synonyms for petty in this context are the words minor, lower, junior, or secondary. So the next time you remember the picture of this bug on the hand, remember the word petty and what it means. And now for the next keyword, commentary. Now you look at this picture, it's a stadium, a soccer stadium, and there are a lot of fans, and imagine you're watching that at home. How wonderful that would be. Now, if you're watching it from the stadium, there's no problem because you can live all the action, you can feel it, you can hear it. But what if you're watching from home? All of that is fine, but there is one piece missing, and that's very important. And this is the commentary. So, what is the meaning of commentary? Let's find out. Commentary is a variable noun. A commentary is a description of an event that is broadcast on radio or television while the event is taking place. For example, that program will include live commentary on the England-Ireland game. And synonyms for commentary are the words narration, report, review, and explanation. A commentary can be used in a different context as well. A commentary is an article or book which explains or discusses something. For example, Mr. Rich will be writing a twice-weekly commentary on American society and culture. So it is an article, it's not on a football match or a basketball match. And synonyms for commentary in this context are the words analysis, notes, review, and critique. And finally, commentary can be used as an uncountable noun. Commentary is discussion or criticism of something. For example, the show mixed comedy with social commentary. Or her gentle smile was perhaps a commentary on my humor. That means criticism. So the next time you remember the picture of the stadium and all the fans, remember the word commentary and what it means. And now for the next keyword, sheepish. Now you look at the picture, you see this lady laughing at something and covering her mouth. She doesn't want to laugh at it, but she's laughing anyway. Now what does that gesture tell us? Well, it kind of shows us that she might have done something wrong or silly, and she's kind of embarrassed, and that's why she's laughing this way. So could that have the same meaning of sheepish? Let's find out. Now, sheepish is an adjective. If you look sheepish, you look slightly embarrassed because you feel foolish or you have done something silly. For example, the couple leapt apart when she walked in on them and later came downstairs looking sheepish. So they did this because it was slightly embarrassing. And synonyms for sheepish are the words embarrassed, uncomfortable, ashamed, or silly. We can use sheepishly as an adverb. For example, he grinned sheepishly. So the next time you remember this picture of this lady covering her mouth and laughing, remember the word sheepish and what it means. And now for the next keyword, grit. Now look at the picture. Obviously the man is not laughing, but he's kind of pressing his teeth together. What does that mean? What does that tell you? Is he trying to achieve something? Is he in pain? Or is he angry? And how does that relate to the word grit? Now let's find out how grit has to do with this picture. Grit is an uncountable noun. Grit is very small pieces of stone. It is often put on roads in winter to make them less slippery. For example, he felt tiny bits of grit and sand peppering his knees. And synonyms for grit in this context are the words gravel, sand, dust, or pebbles. Still no relation to the picture we just saw. Let's see, grit can be used in a different context as well. Now, if someone has grit, they have the determination and courage to continue doing something even though it is very difficult. For example, you've got to admire her grit, her determination and courage to continue even everything is facing her is very difficult. She's going through difficult times, but that is not stopping her. So that is a little bit close to the picture we saw. That gesture might show that this person is determined and courageous. But let's see, grit can also be used in a different context. Now, we can use grit as a verb. If you grit your teeth, you press your upper and lower teeth tightly together, usually because you are angry about something. That is much closer to the picture we just saw. For example, gritting my teeth, I did my best to stifle one or two remarks. And synonyms for grit in this context are the words clench, grind, grate, or gnash. And there's a common phrase that uses grit, and that is to grit your teeth. If you grit your teeth, you make up your mind to carry on even if the situation is very difficult. So it is not literal, it's metaphorical. Maybe just like the picture we just saw, but that doesn't mean that you're angry. It means that you are determined and you will go on no matter what. For example, there's going to be hardship, but we have to grit our teeth and get on with it. So the next time you remember the picture of this man with his teeth pressed together, remember the word grit and what it means. And now for the next key word, nonconformist. Now you look at the picture and you can see all these light bulbs. They all look the same, exactly the same, except the one in the middle. It looks different. Well, maybe because that's the only one that is lit. But what we care about is that it is different from the rest. How does that relate to the word nonconformist? Or does it relate at all? Let's find out. A nonconformist is an adjective. If you say that someone's way of life or opinions are nonconformist, you mean that they are different from those of most people. just like this light bulb, which is different from all the rest. For example, their views are nonconformist and their political opinions are extreme. And synonyms for nonconformist are the words dissenting, dissident, heterodox, and schismatic. And nonconformist can mean the person. A nonconformist is someone who is nonconformist. For example, Victoria stood out as a dazzling nonconformist. So the next time you remember the picture of all these light bulbs with the one in the middle shining, different from all the rest, remember the word nonconformist and what it means. And now for the next key word, ovation. Now you look at the picture and you can see a couple of people in the picture clapping, applauding someone, maybe congratulating them for doing something, etc. I hope this happens to you all the time. When you see people looking at you this way and applauding you for doing something great. But going back to our word, ovation, how does that relate to the picture we have? Does it mean the clapping part or the happy part or the celebrating an achievement part? So what does it mean exactly? Let's find out. Now, ovation is a countable noun. An ovation is a large amount of applause from an audience for a particular performer or speaker. And this is a formal word to use. For example, they had lost by a wide margin, but their supporters gave them a defiant, loyal ovation. And synonyms for ovation here are the words applause, hand, cheering, or cheers. And there's a common phrase we use with ovation, and that is standing ovation. If a speaker or performer gets a standing ovation when they have finished speaking or performing, the audience stands up to clap in order to show its admiration or support. So the next time you remember the picture of these people applauding somebody, clapping their hands, remember the word ovation and what it means. And now for the final keyword for this chapter, smug. Now you look at the picture of this man and you can see that he's smiling. He's kind of happy, but it doesn't feel right. I don't think you like this kind of smile. It shows a little bit of superiority, that he feels like he's better than all of us. He's smiling at us in this way. Maybe that's the meaning of the word smug? Maybe. Let's find out. Smug is an adjective. And if you say that someone is smug, you are criticizing the fact they seem very pleased with how good, clever, or lucky they are. And this is a negative word. You use it to show your disapproval. For example, Thomas and his wife looked at each other in smug satisfaction. They were very pleased with how good, clever, or lucky they were, but that is not a cool thing to do. And synonyms for smug are the words self-satisfied, superior, complacent, and conceited. We can use smugly as a graded adverb. For example, the major smiled smugly and sat down. It's definitely not a nice smile. We can use smugness as an uncountable noun. For example, he had the smugness that many lawyers show. We can see that kind of smugness on lawyers usually. He had it. So the next time you remember the picture of this man giving us this superior smile of his, remember the word smug and what it means. And that's all for chapter 4.